Real quick, just wanted to mention that I accidentally said in this video that Sean McVay is 0-6 against Kyle Shanahan. What I meant is that he's lost his last 6 matchups against Kyle Shanahan. Small point, but I knew I would get comments if I didn't mention it here. Mentioning it here. Anyways, on with your regularly scheduled video. All right, 49ers Rams part 3. Some interesting stuff to get to. I have a lot of numbers, I have a lot of film to talk about because we've seen these teams play each other multiple times already, including the week before the playoffs started when both teams had a lot to play for. So we got a lot of data here that we can go over, and it should be interesting to just talk about it. Let's look at this chart right off the bat. These are Matt Stafford's numbers when he is blitzed versus when he is not blitzed. So you see his numbers, he's 4th best in PFF grade when he's blitzed, and he's best in passer rating when he's blitzed, whereas when he's not blitzed, 14th best in PFF grade and 9th best in passer rating. The 49ers blitz almost never. They're 29th in blitz percentage. So right off the bat, you can start to see why this has been kind of a tough matchup for the Rams. And listen, we know it's a tough matchup for the Rams. The 49ers beat the Rams both times they played each other. And in fact, Kyle Shanahan is 6-0 against Sean McVay. So we know the matchup is bad, but why is it bad? And what can the Rams do to kind of counter that? Well, let's look at this chart. This stuff is very fascinating, and I've been doing this with these these conference championship round matchups because I think it's interesting. So you're going to see the top 4 target getters for the Rams and how to do against man and against zone. So the 4 categories here are PFF grade versus man, and then yards per route ran versus man, then PFF grade versus zone, and yards per route ran versus zone. So you see Cooper Kupp at the top. Some really impressive stuff. I mean, the 4.64 yards per route ran against man is stupidly high. Like, there's no reason it should be that high. He has more yards than anybody else. Against man, he has more yards than anybody else, period. But, man's really where he thrives. Incredible PFF grade versus man. Comes back down to earth. Still really impressive against zone. Like, listen, Cooper Kupp's good. There's no denying that. But definitely is, where he is elite at and, all-time great at is against man. And then he's just the number 1 receiver against zone, basically. You see, Odell is another guy who can beat man coverage pretty effectively, and he definitely has had more success against man. And then for guys like Tyler Higbee and Van Jefferson, they get more yards per route ran versus zone, but part of me wonders how much of that is simply because when it's man, you just throw it to Cooper Kupp unless he's double teamed, and sometimes even then you throw it to him because, Tyler Higbee's PFF grade is almost identical against either one, and Van Jefferson does actually get better against zone. So it's likely to think Jefferson is legitimately a better zone option, whereas Higbee kind of might just be, he gets more targets because of the way teams are taking away Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson on those plays. So this, I think, is important, and this is something that can kind of make us realize, okay, well, listen, we know the San Francisco 49ers play a lot of zone. They, earlier on in the year played a lot more cover 3, have been playing a lot more cover 4 as of late. So the 49ers play zone coverage a lot, and this kind of neutralizes Cooper Kupp. Doesn't stop him, and only slows him down to some degree. Like 2.76 yards per route ran is very impressive, but it's just not the godly 4.64. So you're not getting destroyed by their best option, which can be part of why this matchup is in San Francisco's favor. Over here now, so what we see here is this is where each team ranks in specific categories in terms of PFF grades. So for the Rams, really good passing attack, really good receiving attack, the best pass blocking in football according to PFF, whereas for the 49ers, they have a really good pass rush, but could that be neutralized by the good pass blocking? Typically, yes. Typically, if it's good on good, that favors the offensive line, whereas if it's bad on bad, that favors the defensive line. Although, again, when we talk about neutralizing Nick Bosa, we're saying that, slow him down, not stop him, of course. Coverage has been mediocre this year for the 49ers, but it has picked up these past few weeks. Meanwhile, for the running game, this is advantage San Francisco, but I think that, we've seen the Rams, last week, they couldn't run the ball at all against Tampa Bay. Didn't matter. They threw it all over them. So they can still have success if they can't run the ball that effectively. Let's look at the box score, and let's look at how the Rams did the first time these two teams played each other. We're going to go through the first game, then we're going to go through the second game, and then kind of put all of this data that we've talked about together and come up with a conclusion on how the Rams offense will do against the 49ers defense. So the first game you see that, Matthew Stafford threw the ball basically all day. Didn't have incredible efficiency there. Only 243 yards on 41 attempts. That's not god-awful, but it's not good. And then for, the running game, they only ran the ball 9 times. We'll get into why this happened in a bit. Cooper Kupp had, he had a good day because he always has a good day. In fact, he had more than half of the total passing yards in that one. Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee each had, small impacts, I would say. Jefferson a little bit higher than Higbee, and Odell was new to the team and didn't have a big impact in that way. Although, interestingly, looking over here now at the PFF grades, you see that guys like Tyler Higbee, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford were at the top of the PFF grades. This is, the offensive Rams players for that first game, Andrew Whitworth. So you have some players who did very well, and Stafford especially, his numbers weren't great, but according to PFF, he actually played pretty well. So what happened? Is it the box score? Was this box score stat misleading, which does happen pretty frequently? Well, let's get into the film. Let's talk about some of these just sort of miscues that happened early on. Really, the Rams got off to a very slow start, and they got behind San Francisco immediately and kind of had to really change their game plan on the fly. The way this play works is you're going up against cover 2 zone, and this concept can work against cover 2. You have one receiver who runs over the middle, takes away the safety. The other guy kind of follows him. There's no safety there. He could get open. Watch how right when this play starts, you see that Matt Stafford here, he looks up, and there is a window for him to make this throw. This is a throw that, you expect him to make. However, Stafford's throw just kind of sails on him a little bit. Maybe it was a miscommunication, I don't know, but that should have been intercepted, and we saw a few of these. In fairness, we do see this from Stafford from time to time. He is known to miss a throw or two. Like, that is something that he does in a team like San Francisco, who typically, if you miss a throw high, they have someone behind that receiver who can make the play. That's a bad thing, and that can be how some of these interceptions happen. This one, what you're going to see is it was just a quick pass that should have easily been caught, but it just dropped, went right to a defender, which ends up creating a pick six. Like, okay, listen, was that a good play? Like, sure, it was a good defensive play, taking advantage of your opponent's mistakes. That's what football is. That's what you're supposed to do. So good job by Jimmy Ward, who's a good player. Like, he does that stuff. But that's not going to happen consistently. That's not something that we need to sit here and say, oh, that's advantage in San Francisco's favor, because the reality is that's kind of fluky. But it did hurt a team like LA a lot the first time these two teams played. But now I want to go over here because, okay, so yeah, that stuff happened. There were some mistakes. But after they got past that slow start, I thought the offense moved the ball pretty effectively. I thought there was a lot I saw on tape that said, hey, well, that was pretty good. Like what you see on this play is it's a cover 3 zone, and you have a concept that the Rams love to run. It's a, going to be a play action. Stafford runs towards the top of the screen, and you have, a deep route, a crossing route over the middle, and also an underneath route for Stafford to choose from. Watch how when Stafford, runs this bootleg, you're going to see that there is an opening. It might not be like super wide open, but it's open enough. This is all Stafford really needs. Look, Stafford can make that throw, 9 out of 10 times, and you're going to be able to pick up a big chunk play. So this stuff did happen, and this is what gives you optimism for the Rams is like, listen, that first game was definitely an anomaly. They had stuff work. Like this one, exact same play. It's going to be a very similar concept where you're just trying to get that stuff going over the middle. It's not the exact same play because the bootleg isn't going to really go the way it worked last time. But watch what happens. Stafford takes the snap, and it looks like it was kind of a design like fake bootleg a little bit. Anyways, what you see is that there is, again, another opening over the middle. This is the stuff that they can't attack San Francisco on when San Francisco plays cover 3 zone. As you see, Stafford makes this throw, very accurate throw, and you are going to be able to pick up a big chunk play. So again, you do this kind of stuff, it can be effective, especially in cover 3. Can work against cover 4 as well, which, as I said, we started to see a lot more of from San Francisco, but especially against cover 3, it works. A play like this is another perfect example where what's going to happen on this one is it's going to be a zone coverage play, cover 3 zone. And again, you have a receiver who's going to run a deep route, then kind of get over the middle. This takes away the deep corner. You then have another player, Cooper Kupp, who's going to kind of follow him. Very similar to that first play I showed you. Watch how right when this play begins, you see that Stafford, fakes as though he's going to throw it to a player in the flat. This opens up the window to hit Cooper Kupp. Then when Stafford throws it, Kupp is wide open. You pick up a big chunk play right there. So again, like I'm saying, these things existed, these things were real, and if you can consistently get this stuff going into playoff game, you're probably going to the Super Bowl. It's that simple, I would say. And one final point on a game like this, I just want to reiterate the way that the Rams beat themselves in ways they typically don't. Like, this is going to be a classic example of like one of those plays where I'm just not going to take that much into it, even though it was a big play in the game. It's a 3rd down. Cooper Kupp is in one-on-one coverage. This is the great situation for Stafford. especially because the guy covering Cooper Kupp is a safety, which, again, apparently Todd Bowles didn't get the message. I'm sure the 49ers coaching staff should get it. Stop trying to cover Cooper Kupp with safeties. I don't care that he's in the slot. Move your best corner to the slot. Move Jalen Ramsey to the slot if you have to. Like, don't just leave a safety on Kupp. It makes zero sense. But watch, Kupp is going to win this matchup. He gets easily open, but just drops the football. And that's just not something that he's going to do in the future. If you play man coverage, he's going to get open, and he's typically going to catch the football. You got to break that time for San Francisco. So, as a whole, obviously, the 49ers did some nice things in this game and made things difficult for the Rams. They took advantage of the Rams' mistakes, but it felt more of the Rams beating themselves as opposed to getting beat, which is good for the Rams. However, in the second game, the numbers are shockingly similar, right? Sort of similar stuff from Matt Stafford. I mean, a little bit better in this game because, similar yardage totals, but he threw the ball 9 less times, so that's certainly going to make things a little bit better. They ran the ball more, definitely, but they didn't have much success doing it. Sony Michel had 21 carries, only 43 yards, so that's not great. Again, Cooper Kupp had nearly half of the yards in this game, and also Tyler Higbee and then Van Jefferson had some impacts, and Odell Beckham, once again, 2 catches for 18 yards, the same stat line he had the last time these two teams played each other. Looking at the Rams offensive chart, again, from that Week 18 game against San Francisco, you see a couple of notable differences. I mean, for one thing, you see, like Cooper Kupp still at the top. You expect that. Andrew Whitworth still at the top. You expect that. Although one notable difference is Matt Stafford, who was very high last time on this list, is now all the way down to number 10 on this list. So he's dropped a little bit, and the grade dropped as well. It wasn't just other players played better this time. No, that's not the case. And another clear notable difference is the amount of kind of depth receivers that went below. And again, it's hard to call Van Jefferson a depth receiver. He's a good receiver, but kind of as a third option in this offense, did not have the day we typically expect from Jefferson. So stuff like that is interesting. But again, numbers don't tell us anything unless we watch the film to get the context for it. So one thing, a play like this is a great example of how San Francisco can counter the Rams. And in fact, San Francisco, they're kind of a defense where guys get better at this zone defense the more they play throughout the season. This is kind of why I feel like we see Kyle Shanahan teams play their best football towards the end of the year. It's in part because of the defense and how when they typically play this zone defense, they're going to get better over time. On this play, it's going to be a cover 3 zone, but with an extra player dropping back into coverage, so those windows get a little bit tighter. You have a Rams player who's going to try and get into a gap in coverage, so on paper, this should work. Look at how when Stafford takes the snap, you can see how it works, right? You can see that there is a passing lane for him to make this throw. This is a play that we've seen the Rams have success with all season long, quite frankly. However, watch corner Emmanuel Moseley make a great read on it and be able to knock it away. This is just understanding your situation, understanding what coverage you're in, knowing how they'll probably try and beat it, and being prepared for that, and that's what Moseley did there. So really good job by him to come in and knock the play away, and this is what they can do against the Rams, which is part of why the matchup works in their favor. Like this one's going to be another one where, again, it's that bootleg. It's going to be in the red zone, but listen, red zones are often how you win or lose games. So on one hand, windows are going to be tighter in the red zone. That is part of it. But still, I think it's a play worth talking about where, again, the way it works, Stafford's going to take the handoff, roll out to the top of the screen, and he has 3 options going in that direction. However, right when this play begins, you're going to notice that really the 49ers just have good coverage, and it's largely just their safeties coming in and being able to, cover both of those 2 crossing routes over the middle. This is also part of why playing quarters coverage can work better against a Sean McVay scheme than cover 3, because you have 2 safeties who can come in instead of just the 1 safety. So Stafford could throw a check down here, but again, there is a 49ers player who can run over and make a tackle. Stafford kind of fakes it though he's going to run, flips it at the last second as his halfback went to block, and they gained no yards on that play. So this is basically what goes into that bad matchup for San Francisco. This is why it can, quite frankly, why it's given Sean McVay so much trouble over the years. And obviously, I know that San Francisco has had different defensive coordinators in that time, but it's usually been the same defensive mindset, which is why I kind of still include all of it. Now, to show a play like this, like there were times when it worked and they were able to get stuff going. Again, there are still things you can do, like something like this where you have 2 deep routes. The safeties are going to naturally take away that, which gives you a crossing route over the middle that can work, especially if you want to play action on this. This can get linebackers out of position. Now, that's not what they're doing on this play. They don't have a play action. They don't even have a halfback in the backfield, but it can still work. Look at how, once Stafford takes the snap, you are going to see that over the middle is open right here. So Stafford can make this throw. Stafford does make this throw, and you're able to pick up a first down there on 2nd and long. So this stuff can work. You can get into these gaps in coverage. We saw them have a ton of success against Tampa Bay, although San Francisco is a much better zone team than Tampa Bay is, so it's a bigger test than I think it was last week for the 49ers, or excuse me, for the Rams. And one last thing, something like this. This is something that Stafford has to make sure he avoids, is don't make a mistake like this, where it's going to be a cover 3 zone. You have a receiver who's going to try and get into a gap in coverage. Basically, you hope that the corner there, mostly, you hope that he comes too far in, and then you can throw over the top of him. That's how you hope this works. Look at how, right when this play begins, you can kind of see how it would work, right? I mean, if you can get the ball there quick enough, and maybe, there would be enough separation if it's a good contested catch for this to be complete. But this is a tough throw, and this is a small window, and it's probably the kind of thing that Matt Stafford should just avoid on this one. It's a 3rd and long, so I get the logic behind it. It's not the end of the world if it's intercepted. However, Stafford does take this chance, and this one is going to end up getting intercepted right there. So this one in a vacuum, not the biggest deal because it was a 3rd down, but again, it's one of those things where you want to make sure he avoids doing this, and it is something that he has at times done over the course of his career. Is, he believes he can fit the ball through any window because he can fit the ball through a lot of windows, but sometimes you can't fit it through every one. All right, final prediction here. So the first time these two teams played, the Rams had 10 points in 9 possessions. Not great, but as I mentioned, I did see some stuff that I liked in that game, even though it didn't show up on the scoreboard. The second game, they scored 24 points in 11 possessions. Much better, which brings their average to 1.7 points per drive over those 2 games. But again, how much do we sort of throw out with the mistakes that were made in the first game that are a little bit fluky? Well, if you look at the season averages, the Los Angeles Rams score 2.68 points per drive on the year, and San Francisco gives up 2.01 points per drive on the year. I'm predicting a 2.5 points per drive performance in a 10-possession game. Now, this is going to be better than either of their previous 2 performances, but I think that that's fair. I think that probably will happen. I think they will be able to kind of find these gaps in coverage and play a more disciplined style than they have these past couple of games, because there is more on the line. It's a trip to go to the Super Bowl, which is very important. The Rams had reason to play the last time these two teams played. They did. They were trying to make sure they won their division and didn't have to be a wild card team. So that's a big deal. It turned out they lost, but still had to go and play Arizona, whereas they would have had an easier matchup had they won. So, they had stuff to play for sure. But yeah, I'm projecting in, this is a good offensive day, 2.5 points per drive, but it still is a little bit lower than the Rams typically get. I think San Francisco does match up well, and they should be able to, neutralize the Rams offense to some degree. But again, will 25 points be enough to beat the 49ers? Well, you'll have to stay tuned for my next video where I break down the other side of the ball, talk about, how many points I think will be scored on the other side of the ball, and who do I have winning the game. Be on the lookout for that. Should be out probably going to be out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that on this channel. Make sure you subscribe so you can see that. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.